What's up, fuckers? Ready for another deep dive into some seriously messed up shit?
Let's do it.
Today, we're talking about the Third Taiwan Strait Crisis. That time in the 90s when China nearly went full-blown ballistic on Taiwan.
Yeah, that was a pretty tense moment in history. A lot of people thought it could be the spark that ignited a major war.
You guys sent in a mountain of sources, Wikipedia, some old news clips, the whole shebang. So let's get this dumpster fire burning.
Sounds good to me.
So back then, Taiwan's trying to break free from China's grip, and China's basically throwing a tantrum, right?
Basically, yeah. See, Taiwan had this dude, Lee Teng-hui,
Li Tenghui, all right.
their president at the time. And Lee was all about getting Taiwan more international recognition, want to show the world they weren't just some, rogue province, but a legitimate democracy.
And how did China feel about that?
Oh, they were pissed. Big time. Like, I found a cockroach in my soup. Levels of pissed.
So what'd they do? Try to shut down Taiwan's internet or something?
Well, their strategy was to isolate Taiwan diplomatically, keep them out of the international spotlight, like try to make them disappear.
Make them disappear? How's that going to work?
Well, for example, in '94, they blocked Lee from visiting the U.S. He was supposed to go to his alma mater, Cornell.
Cornell, fancy.
Right. Just for an alumni thing. But China threw a fit, and the U.S. initially denied Lee a visa. He literally had to sleep on his plane after landing because he wasn't allowed to enter the country.
Damn, that's cold.
It was a major humiliation for Lee and for Taiwan.
So what happened next? Did Lee just give up and go home?
Not a chance. A year later, he gets another invite to Cornell.
Same shit, different year.
Pretty much. China goes apeshit again. They tell the U.S. to block him.
Did the U.S. listen?
Nope. This time, Congress basically told China to go fuck themselves.
Nice.
They pressured the State Department to grant Lee a visa, and he went to the U.S., gave a speech about democracy at Cornell, and pissed off China even more.
So China's fuming, Lee's living his best life. What happened next?
That's when shit really hit the fan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, things are about to get interesting.
All right, spill the beans. What did China do?
Well, buckle up, Buttercup, because China decided to show the world they weren't fucking around.
Did they finally cut off Taiwan's internet?
Nah, they went old school. We're talking missiles, baby. Missiles.
Missiles. Like the blow shit up kind of missiles.
You got it. Starting in July '95, they started launching a bunch of ballistic missiles near Taiwan.
I thought this was the 90s, not the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right. But these weren't just little warning shots either. We're talking multiple rounds splashing down just off Taiwan's coast.
So basically China's saying, we can hit you anytime we want.
That was definitely the message. And just to make sure everyone got it, they started mobilizing troops in Fujian, right across the strait from Taiwan.
Shit just got real.
Yep, things were escalating quickly. And to add insult to injury, the Chinese state press was calling Lee all sorts of names, traitor, scumbag, you name it.
Someone needs a timeout.
Right, but there's another layer to this whole thing that made it even more fucked up.
Oh, lay it on me.
This was all happening just as Taiwan was gearing up for its presidential election in '96.
So China's trying to influence the election.
You got it. They wanted to make damn sure a pro-independence candidate didn't win.
Like that asshole friend who tries to sabotage your date because they're secretly in love with you?
Exactly. It was a blatant attempt to intimidate Taiwan and undermine their democracy.
So China's throwing missiles, Taiwan's trying to elect a president, and the world's watching with bated breath.
Right.
What did the U.S. do while all this shit was going down?
That's the million-dollar question, and believe me, the U.S. response was anything but passive.
All right, let's hear it. What did the good old U.S. of A do?
Well, they had a tough decision to make. They had this strategic ambiguity policy when it came to Taiwan, basically trying to support Taiwan without pissing off China too much.
Typical politician bullshit, playing both sides of the fence.
Yeah, kind of. But when China started lobbing missiles around, the U.S. decided to flex its military muscles and show China they weren't fucking around either.
Oh, yeah. How'd they do that?
They sent not one, but two carrier battle groups to the region, the USS Independence and the USS Nimitz.
Holy shit. Those are like floating cities of fuck you.
Exactly. It was a massive show of force, a clear message to China to back the fuck off.
So China's throwing a tantrum. The U.S. shows up with two aircraft carriers. What happened next? Did shit hit the fan?
Let's just say things got even more interesting after that. Well, China wasn't too thrilled about those aircraft carriers. They actually kept firing missiles.
Seriously. So they're just ignoring the U.S. now?
Yeah, pretty much. This time, they launched them even closer to Taiwan. Some of them landed dangerously close to major shipping lanes. It was a pretty clear fuck you to the international community.
They sound like a toddler throwing a tantrum.
And on top of all that, the Chinese state press was spewing some seriously nasty rhetoric.
What were they saying?
They were calling Li Tenghui all sorts of names. Traitor. Scumbag. You name it.
Real mature.
Yeah.
So anyone try to, calm things down a bit?
There were some back-channel talks going on, but the situation was still pretty tense, all the way up to the Taiwanese election in March of '96.
So like a month-long standoff.
Yeah. And all the while, the U.S. was walking this tightrope, trying to deter China without starting World War III.
So what happened with the election? Did China get what they wanted?
Actually, it backfired spectacularly.
How so?
All that intimidation stuff China was doing, it actually made Li Tenghui even more popular. He ended up winning by a landslide.
So China basically shot themselves in the foot.
Pretty much. Their attempt to bully Taiwan ended up strengthening Taiwan's resolve. It's like they accidentally made Li Tenghui a hero.
Talk about an epic fail.
Right. But the story doesn't end there. This whole crisis had some pretty big long-term consequences for the region.
Like what?
Well, for starters, it really solidified the U.S.-Taiwan relationship.
Makes sense. I mean, the U.S. just sent 2 aircraft carriers to defend them.
Exactly. The U.S. realized they couldn't just stand by and let China push Taiwan around. They started providing Taiwan with even more advanced weapons and made it clear they were serious about defending them.
So basically, the U.S. drew a line in the sand.
You could say that. And then there's the impact on U.S.-Japan relations. Japan was already a little freaked out about China's growing military power, and this whole crisis just confirmed their fears.
I bet it did.
So they started cozying up to the U.S., for protection.
Smart move.
Yeah. They began cooperating more closely on defense, doing joint military exercises, and sharing intelligence. It was the start of a strategic partnership that's still going strong today.
So China's attempt to isolate Taiwan actually brought the U.S. and Japan closer together. That's got to sting.
Talk about unintended consequences. But wait, there's more. Remember those missiles China was firing off?
Yeah, how could I forget? They practically shut down international shipping for a few weeks.
Well, years later, a pretty big bombshell dropped.
What? Did they find out those missiles were made in China with parts from, like, a washing machine or something?
Not quite, but close. It turned out those missiles were actually unarmed.
Unarmed? What the fuck?
Yep. The information came out after this high-ranking Chinese military officer, Liu Liangkun, got busted for leaking secrets to Taiwan.
Oops.
He was executed for treason, but the damage was done. The whole world now knew that China had been bluffing.
They were all bark and no bite. What the hell were they thinking?
It's hard to say for sure. Maybe they were worried about provoking a full-on U.S. military response. Maybe they overestimated their own capabilities. Or maybe they were just trying to save face after their diplomatic efforts failed so miserably. Whatever the reason, it made China look weak and indecisive.
Like they showed up to a gunfight with a water pistol. So what did all of this mean for China in the long run?
Well, it definitely hurt their image on the world stage. They lost a lot of credibility and pretty much confirmed all those paper tiger accusations.
Makes sense.
The whole thing also exposed just how limited their military was at the time. It was a real wake-up call for them.
Like, oh shit, we need to upgrade our military if we want to be taken seriously.
Exactly. The Third Taiwan Strait Crisis basically kicked off this massive military modernization program in China that's still going on today.
So they went on a shopping spree.
Big time. They started buying all sorts of advanced weapons from Russia, like Sovereignty-class destroyers.
What is those?
Think of them as floating missile launchers. They're designed to take out aircraft carriers. And they're pretty damn good at it.
Sounds like China got the message.
They definitely learned a lesson. If you want to play with the big boys, you got to bring some big toys. And after the Third Taiwan Strait Crisis, China started building a whole arsenal of new toys.
So they weren't playing around anymore.
Nope. And that brings us to the million-dollar question. What does all of this mean for the future of Taiwan? Because those tensions between China and Taiwan, they never really went away.
All right, let's talk about that. What's going on over there now, and why should we give a shit?
Well, things are a lot more complicated now than they were back in the 90s. China's military is way more powerful. The U.S. is dealing with a whole bunch of other global crises. And the stakes are higher than ever. But to understand what might happen next, we need to take a closer look at what's changed since the Third Taiwan Strait Crisis and what hasn't. And that's where things get really interesting.
All right, you magnificent bastards. Buckle up. We're about to dive into the deep end of this shitstorm. All right, you magnificent bastards, buckle up. We're about to dive into the deep end of this shitstorm.
So where were we? Yes, China's military upgrades and what that means for Taiwan today. It's a whole different ballgame now compared to the 90s.
Yeah, no kidding. China's been flexing its military muscles like it's prepping for the geopolitical Olympics. So is Taiwan about to become the next Ukraine? Are we all going to get nuked back to the Stone Age over some island most people couldn't even point to on a map?
Those are the questions that keep world leaders up at night. And to be honest, nobody has a fucking crystal ball. But we can look at how things went down back then and what's bringing now to get a sense of what might go down.
All right, Professor Doom, hit me with your worst-case scenario. What's the absolute shit show situation here?
Worst case, China decides to pull a Putin and just invades Taiwan. They've been waving their sabers around for years, buzzing Taiwanese airspace with their jets, running military drills, basically screaming from the rooftops that they haven't ruled out taking Taiwan back by force.
But now they've got the firepower to back it up, right? After that whole missile fiasco in the 90s, they went on a military spending spree like Kardashian at a plastic surgeon.
Exactly. They've been modernizing their military like crazy. Hypersonic missiles, aircraft carriers, the whole 9 yards. They're not quite at the U.S. level yet, but they're catching up fast.
So let's say Xi Jinping wakes up one morning with a raging hard-on for conquest and decides to grab Taiwan by the balls. What's the U.S. going to do? Send them a strongly worded letter.
The U.S. is in a bit of a pickle. They've said they're committed to Taiwan's defense, but they also want to avoid getting into a full-blown war with China. That would be a shitstorm of epic proportions, not just for them, but for the whole fucking world.
So it's like a giant game of chicken, but with nukes instead of rusty pickup trucks? Shit, that's terrifying.
It's a delicate balancing act. They're trying to scare off China without actually provoking them. They're giving Taiwan weapons, doing joint military exercises, letting China know they won't just sit back and watch Taiwan get gobbled up. But they're also trying to keep communication open and avoid anything that could make things worse.
So what's the solution here? Is there any way to stop this whole thing from blowing up in our faces?
Diplomacy. That's the key. The U.S. and China need to keep talking, find some common ground, and put some safety measures in place to stop things from spiraling out of control.
Diplomacy, huh? You think those guys even know the meaning of the word anymore? Seems like they're more into dick measuring contests than peace talks.
I have to believe they understand. Because the alternative is too fucked up to even think about. A war between the U.S. and China would be a total nightmare. Cyber attacks, space warfare, hypersonic missiles, maybe even nukes. We're talking global conflict, the whole world going to shit.
So we're all basically sitting on a powder keg, praying that nobody lights a match. Not exactly a comforting thought.
It's the reality we're facing, and we all need to understand that. The more we know about the risks, the better chance we have of making good decisions and pushing our leaders to find peaceful solutions.
So you're saying we need to be informed citizens, not just sheep watching the world burn while we argue about the latest celebrity bullshit.
Exactly. Educate yourselves.
Yeah.
Figure out what's at stake, what could happen if this goes south, and what options are on the table, and make your voices heard. Contact your representatives, write to newspapers, talk to your friends and family. The more people who understand how serious this is, the better chance we have of stopping this shit before it hits the fan.
All right, beautiful bastards, you heard the man. Time to put down the smartphones, turn off the reality TV, and start paying attention to the real world. The future of Taiwan, maybe even the future of humanity, depends on it. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and for fuck's sake, don't be an asshat. Peace out.